Good morning, everybody. I'm Chris Hatashita. I am the General Chair for EMC 2016, and it is my very great pleasure to welcome you all to my hometown of Ottawa, Canada. I hope you're enjoying the symposium so far, and if there's absolutely anything I can do to make this a more memorable experience for you, please feel free to walk up to me, grab my hand, shake it, introduce yourself, and let me know what I can do for you there. My kids are here, they're volunteering, and I don't know if they're here, but they might be, and they might have sent a spy in because they said, I have to tell everybody that today's my birthday. And thank you. No. Thank you. You don't turn 29 every day, so. But they also said I had to show my my birthday present, so. There we go. There you go, Jerry. It says I'm kind of a big deal, so at least in my own mind. I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker for our symposium, and when we went out and searched for a keynote speaker, we checked around, and people that weren't available and people that were charging way too much money and were expecting far too much for what we were asking of them. And then somebody said, you know what, right under our nose is somebody who is like absolutely excellent, and said, yeah, who might that be? And I said, Bob Scully. And I went, oh my goodness, it didn't even cross my mind. And went to Bob, and he jumped right up and said, yeah, absolutely. So Bob is on the committee for the 2016 symposium, and there it was, a lesson in life. Don't go looking so far, because right there is exactly what you were looking for. Dr. Robert Scully is an EMC engineer with NASA. He has 30 years experience in the field. He holds a PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Texas at Arlington. He has a strong emphasis in electromagnetics, and in addition to being an IEEE fellow and a registered professional engineer in the state of Texas, Bob is the immediate past president of the IEEE EMC Society. He has served in all officer functions on the Technical Activities Committee, TC1 and TC4. Bob is also an associate editor for the EMC Society Transactions and is currently serving as the founder and chair of the Galveston Bay, Houston EMC chapter. Bob is a licensed commercial and amateur radio operator. He holds various EMC certifications from the Missouri University of Science and Technology and from INARTE. I'm very happy to say that among the many committees on which Bob has served, the EMC 2016 Symposium Committee is one of them. I've gotten to know him quite a bit over the past year or so, and I'm pleased and honored to introduce you to your keynote speaker this morning, Dr. Robert Scully.
Thank you very much, Chris, for the very kind introduction, and thanks to the committee for giving me this honor. I appreciate that very much. Good morning, everybody. How do you like it here in Ottawa so far? Yeah. Huh? Maybe I should have said, how do you like it in Ottawa? A. All right. So good morning and welcome to the 2016 International Symposium. So let's talk a little bit about Ottawa itself. Here we are in the beautiful city of Ottawa. It's also known as the Silicon Valley of the North. Now, Ottawa's name is believed to have originated from the Algonquin word Ottawa, and that means to trade. And that's very appropriate because that's exactly why we're here. We're here to trade our knowledge, our skills, our experiences, and our friendship. We're here to renew old acquaintances, and we are here also to forge new ones. The EMC Society and its members are a close-knit bunch, with a membership hovering around 4,000 souls from year to year. Some of us have been around for a very long time. Some of us just got started. Some of us will join us here this week, and some of us have left us with their legacies. We are indeed like a big family, and like a family, we've had our ups and downs. I can tell you that if you can get 5 EMC engineers in a room together to talk about a particular problem, you're apt to get 10 different opinions. I think you're going to see a lot of that this week. But through it all, and despite our seeming differences at times, we have one common thread that crosses that binds us together. Of course, we all work to improve the latest design that crosses our desks, because if we didn't, that design probably wouldn't make it out the door. We all strive to explain to management how what we do, in fact, adds value to the process. We keep delving into the physics of what we do, searching for ways to solve the intractable, like how to make connectors smaller and smaller and smaller, even though the data speeds are becoming faster and faster and faster. We care for our facilities and work constantly to improve our capabilities. But at the heart of it all, when we go out and try to make the world a better, safer place, we are all practicing the discipline that we know as electromagnetic compatibility. Now, most of us didn't start out to be EMC engineers. No. We started out as Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts working for a merit badge. We started out as casual tinkerers in our father's workshop or garage. Or perhaps we were lucky enough to be high school students and able to sign up for an electronics class. Some of us started to become radio amateurs, and we started out with crystal radio sets. Many of us who share this particular malady like nothing better than to retreat back to the shack, whip out some newfangled circuitry out of the stacks of junk, spare parts that we have laying about. Some of us went on to become electronics technicians, and the luckier ones went to college and got that cherished degree in electrical engineering or physics. Some of these found out they really liked doing the research. And after sufficient time, blood, sweat, and tears, they earned a PhD and they landed a coveted teaching slot. Others just wanted out of school as soon as possible. They burned their books, they got a job, and some of those found out that engineering wasn't what it was all cracked up to be. But we were good at what we did, and soon people began asking our advice on how to improve their designs. One thing led to another after that. More likely, the boss saw that we had the knack and reassigned us to be the EMC engineer.
I'm worried about little Dilbert. He's not like other kids.
What do you mean?
Yesterday, I left him alone for a minute, and he disassembled the TV, our clock, and the stereo.
That's perfectly normal. Kids take things apart.
Oh. The part that worries me is he used the components to build a ham radio set.
Oh dear.
Is that bad?
Normally I'd want to run an EEG on him, but the machine isn't working. It's worse than I feared.
What is it?
I'm afraid your son has the knack.
The knack?
The knack. It's a rare condition characterized by an extreme intuition about all things mechanical and electrical, and utter social ineptitude.
Can he lead a normal life?
No. He'll be an engineer.
No!
There.
Some of us went on into circuit design and worked at the device and component level. Some of us went into bigger things and ended up in the automotive industry or in the aerospace industry. Some of us went into the military and then joined a contractor, or just skipped the military altogether and went for the bigger paycheck right away. Some of us stayed in the commercial world and began specializing in power supply design and high-speed data transfer. A small number of us were crazy enough from the start to just go for the work wherever we could find it, because it was different, because it was challenging, because it was fascinating, and let's face it, it was addicting. No matter how we arrived, all of us found a niche. All of us found that somebody needed our skills, our determination, our knack. whatever we found and whatever found us, we were happy because we were doing EMC. I might point out that as EMC engineers, we have a lot of folks to thank for us being able to do what we do every day. We have our employers and our professors to thank. More importantly, we have our wives and our husbands to thank. But these are the most important in our daily lives. There are also the giants whose shoulders we stand on every day. Ørsted and Ampere and Biot-Savart, Thomson, Faraday and Maxwell, Heaviside, Fitzgerald and Hertz, Tesla and Einstein. Others too numerous to mention, all played seminal roles, not only in the development of electromagnetic theory, but also in establishing a part of physics that will guarantee we will stay employed for the rest of our lives. But just what is this discipline known as electromagnetic compatibility, or EMC? I often get asked by, and I'll use the term laypersons, what do I do for a living? I say, well, I work for NASA. Wow, that must be really cool. What is it that you do for NASA? Do you build rockets? No, I'm an electromagnetic compatibility engineer. I get a deer in the headlights look. Deep breath. Well, that sounds fascinating. What exactly is an electromagnetic compatibility engineer? Sometimes I take the route less well-traveled, and I actually try to explain my job. But usually, not always, that gets just another deer in the headlights look. Now we get to this point, I realize the person I'm talking to probably has no clue about electromagnetic theory, other than what he or she may have picked up from popular TV shows and movies like Star Trek or Doctor Who or Warehouse 13. So I usually fall back on the more cliche examples like buzzing noises that appear in speakerphones when somebody sets their cell phone next to it during a conference, or competing radio signals when driving long distances between cities. Some folks can tell me that they've had strange experiences, such as having their garage doors opened and closed when they haven't commanded them, or even had the controls jammed. Turns out the DoD added some new land mobile radio services operating in the same frequency range. And according to the FCC rules, the garage door receivers just had to suck it up. My job, I say, is to prevent such things from happening. In a similar sort of fashion, I do the same sort of thing for hardware on the International Space Station. Oh, they say. They nod their heads very knowingly as if I've said something really important and impressive. Now, to them, it might be impressive. To me, it's my job and it's my passion. And although it can be really tough some days, like other EMC engineers, I do it because I love it. But I digress. What is EMC? Perhaps we could start with a definition. The IEEE defines it as the origin, control, and measurement of electromagnetic effects on electronic and biologic systems. Well, that seems a bit like the proverbial 10,000-foot level to me. I checked the ARRL website and I found a whole lot of information on EMI and RFI and EMC, but there was no clear and straightforward definition to any of those terms. I must not have looked in the right place. I also was not able to locate a definition on the IEEE EMC Society webpage. I did find the field of interest statement. The field of interest of the Society involves engineering related to the electromagnetic environmental effects of systems to be compatible with themselves and their intended operational environment. This includes standards, measurement techniques, test procedures, instrumentation, equipment, systems characteristics, interference control techniques and components, education, computational analysis, and spectrum management, along with scientific, technical, industrial, professional, and other activities that contribute to the field. Did you memorize that? That's quite a mouthful, but to me it still seems like it somehow misses the target. I also was not able to find a definition of EMC on the FCC webpage, even though they have an entire division called the Electromagnetic Compatibility Division. Surprisingly, I did find a nice definition of EMC on the U.S. Food and Drug Administration webpage. And it says, electromagnetic compatibility, or EMC, means that a device is compatible with, in other words, no interference is caused by, its electromagnetic environment, and it does not emit levels of electromagnetic energy that cause electromagnetic interference in other devices in the vicinity. We're getting close. Then I found this from the DoD. The ability of systems, equipment, and devices that utilize the electromagnetic spectrum to operate in their intended operational environments without suffering unacceptable degradation or causing unintentional degradation. I'm losing my place. Let me start that over. The ability of systems, equipment, and devices that utilize the electromagnetic spectrum to operate in their intended operational environments without suffering unacceptable degradation or causing unintentional degradation because of electromagnetic radiation or response. Involves the application of sound electromagnetic spectrum management, system, equipment, and device design configuration that ensures interference-free operation and clear concepts and doctrines that maximize operational effectiveness. That's a definition. And that's what I do, and that's what we do. EMC, as we know it today, has come a long way from the days when Hertz first transmitted radio frequency energy across the room between one spark generator to the next. In fact, it was an interference problem that Hertz created by setting up his apparatus in the fashion that he did. He just didn't know it. However, most of the work performed in laboratories during the same time period was unknown to the general public and really remained within the circles of the research scientists. The earliest EMC issue the public was aware of was probably the interference from and damage caused by lightning strikes near and to buildings. Thanks to Ben Franklin, lightning rods or lightning conductors began to appear in the mid-18th century. Interestingly enough, James Clerk Maxwell believed that Franklin's lightning rods were not a good thing. In fact, he believed that lightning rods attracted lightning. And he refused to allow the installation of lightning rods on any building or structure in which he or any of his family resided in. Now, the way I see it, Maxwell was a pretty smart fellow. I don't have any lightning rods on my house. I do, however, have a chimney, and I did get hit by lightning a while back, and it took out most of the electronics in my house, so I rest my case. Among other things, Tesla invented the necessary transformers and rotating machinery designs to make AC electrical power practical, eventually forming the backbone of what we know as the modern electrical power distribution system that we all know and love today. However, along with this new power distribution system came surges and brownouts and blackouts caused by control station operations, lightning attachments to overhead lines. A lot of effort was expended to understand and control these effects at the time, and this is still a critical aspect of our electrical power distribution system today. Tesla also invented radio. He called it wireless before wireless was cool. And then Marconi popularized it. Soon radio started showing up everywhere. Yes, that's correct. Tesla invented radio. And here's part of the story. Tesla discovered he could transmit and receive powerful radio frequency signals when he tuned what we today call his Tesla coils to resonate at the same frequency. When such a coil is tuned to a signal of particular frequency, it literally magnifies the incoming electrical energy through resonant action. By early 1895, Tesla was ready to transmit a signal 50 miles to West Point, New York. But at that point, disaster struck. A building fire consumed Tesla's lab and wiped out all of his work and all of his notes. Keep that in mind the next time you need to do a backup. Timing could not have been worse. In England, a young Italian experimenter named Guglielmo Marconi had been hard at work building a device for wireless telegraphy. The young Marconi had taken the first wireless telegraphy patent out in England in 1896. His device had only a two-circuit system, which some said could not even transmit across a pond. Later, Marconi set up long-distance demonstrations using, yes, the Tesla oscillator, and he sent signals across the English Channel. Tesla filed his own basic radio patent applications in 1897 in the United States. They were granted in 1900. Marconi's first patent application in America, filed on November the 10th, 1900, was turned down. Marconi's revised applications over the next 3 years were also rejected because of the priority of Tesla and other inventors. The Patent Office made the following comment in 1903. Many of these claims are not patentable over Tesla patent numbers, blah, blah, blah. The amendment to overcome said references, as well as Marconi's pretended ignorance of the nature of a Tesla oscillator, is little short of absurd. The term Tesla oscillator has become a household word on 2 continents. But no patent is truly safe, as Tesla's career demonstrated over and over again. In 1900, the Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company began thriving in the stock markets. This was due primarily to Marconi's family connections with English aristocracy. British Marconi stock soared from $3 to $22 per share. Now, this is in 1900. $22 a share in 1900 was unbelievable. The glamorous young Italian nobleman was internationally acclaimed. Edison and Andrew Carnegie piled on and invested in Marconi, and Edison became a consulting engineer of American Marconi. And if you'll recall, Tesla and Edison were not exactly the best of friends at this time. Then on December the 12th, 1901, Marconi for the first time transmitted and received signals across the Atlantic Ocean. Thank you. Otis Pond, an engineer then working for Tesla, said, "It looks as if Marconi has gotten the jump on you." Tesla replied, "Marconi is a good fellow. Let him continue. He is using 17 of my patents." But Tesla's calm confidence was shattered in 1904 when the U.S. Patent Office suddenly and surprisingly reversed its previous position and gave Marconi the patent for the invention of radio. The reasons for this have never been fully explained, but the powerful financial backing for Marconi in the United States suggests a possible explanation. Tesla was embroiled in other problems at the time, but when Marconi won the Nobel Prize in 1911 for radio, Tesla became furious. He sued the Marconi company for infringement in 1915, but he had no money, he had no funds to pursue a litigation against a major corporation. The road to the Supreme Court began in 1916 when the very same Marconi company asserted its radio patents in an infringement suit against the United States in the Court of Claims for use of their patents during World War I. In 1935, the Court of Claims invalidated Marconi's patents, and the appeal that ensued behind that finally reached the Supreme Court in 1943, right at the beginning of World War II. Finally, a few months after Tesla passed, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld Tesla's radio patent. Why the second reversal? The court may have had a selfish reason for doing so. The Marconi company was suing the United States government for use of its patents. The court simply avoided the action by restoring the priority of Tesla's patent. So it wasn't about the technology, it was about the money. In any event, Tesla got the recognition he deserved at that time. When radio equipment was installed in aircraft, that's when the real EMC problems started showing up. Exposed antenna leads and the need to control the undesirable effects of such arrangement was recognized and gave birth to the term electromagnetic interference. Other issues were soon identified, among them precipitation static. Caused by particulate matter impacting airplanes in flight, this process, known as triboelectrification, imparted electrical charge that eventually had to bleed off, creating severe broadband electrical noise, effectively preventing any radio or navigation systems from functioning properly. Contrary to popular opinion, triboelectrification is not the result of friction. It is the result of two materials, usually dissimilar but not always, coming into contact one with the other and then separating. Energy exchange occurs at the time of the separation, and the energy exchange can facilitate the excitation of electrons into outer orbits where they can be stripped off. This is all related to work functions of the elements involved. Suffice it to say that electrical charge can and does transfer from one material to the other. Triboelectrification is, of course, still with us. Physics doesn't change, at least on human timescales. It was the threat of this phenomenon and its effects that repeatedly delayed and ultimately led to the scrub of the launch of the Ares rocket from Pad 39B in the October timeframe of 2009. I do not want to hear the word triboelectrification anymore, said NASA Constellation Program Manager Jeff Hanley. He and other NASA officials acknowledged that they had underestimated the phenomenon and its potential to delay liftoff. This experience gave us a heads up, said Hanley. EMC topics today are far greater in scope than a handful of individual and rather specialized or unique circumstances. We are surrounded by cell phones, smartphones, desktops, laptops, iPads, iPods, refrigerators that can tell you the milk is bad and it's time to buy eggs, robotically controlled automobiles, including large semi-tractor trailer rigs carrying heavy cargo, connected automobiles that can log into the internet, initiate and receive telephone calls, contact factory support, and tell you which tire is low on its air. Remotely piloted commercial and military aerospace platforms ranging from the small and irritating drone your next-door neighbor's teenager is using to spy on your daughter, to highly sophisticated and lethal weapon systems. Multiple satellite constellations providing Earth's surface positional and altitude data accurate to within centimeters, and solar panel installations ranging from single panels and backpacks for recharging portable devices to multi-acre farms providing industrial-scale electrical power. My wife and I recently traveled from Houston, Texas to Salida, Colorado, a road trip that covered 1,000 miles in one direction. We passed through the heart of northwest Texas, and there we saw huge wind turbine farms literally stretching as far as the eye can see. A quote from 2014 article by E&E Publishing stated, roughly 25,000 megawatts of wind energy projects are currently under study by the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. ERCOT has completed interconnection agreements for 7,500 megawatts of new wind power. When all of that new generation comes online in 2016, West Texas should send nearly 16,000 megawatts of power to the grid, as much wind energy as the current combined output of the next three largest wind-producing states, California, Iowa, and Illinois. Increasing clock and data transfer speeds, decreasing physical component size, the use of exotic composite materials instead of conductive materials, ubiquitous Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and cell phone signals crammed ever more closely together in urban environments, public venues and workplaces, smart grid applications and design, the Intranet of Things is the present we live in. None of this emerging technology would be possible without proper EMC design. In contrast to this rapid explosion of technology is the seeming dichotomy of the at once laissez-faire attitude regarding the ubiquity of ever more amazing technological devices, combined with what appears to be an inability to do without. How many of us can get by today without internet access or cell phone in a purse or a hip pocket? Just how deeply ingrained this has become can be gleaned from a partial quote from a recent Montreal Gazette article by Chris Knight about the latest Star Trek movie. Back in the old days of Star Trek, when a flip-open communicator was far-flung future technology and not just a charmingly retro cell phone design. Really? Tesla saw it coming all the way back in 1926 when he said, "When wireless is perfectly applied to the whole Earth, it will be converted into a huge brain," which in fact it already is. All things being particles of a real and rhythmic whole. We shall be able to communicate with one another instantly, irrespective of distance. Not only this, but through television and telephony, we shall see and hear one another as perfectly as though we were face to face, despite intervening distances of thousands of miles. And the instruments through which we shall be able to do this will be amazingly simple compared with our present telephones. A man will be able to carry one in his vest pocket. I say for a man who could not possibly have seen a cell phone, he was right on. All of the design and analysis associated with building everything from Kindle readers to deep space probes brings a plethora of requirements to the table that drive engineering relentlessly towards compliance. EMC engineers get paid not only for their innate ability to solve problems, but also for their ability to interpret requirements in ways even they never dreamed of, to get the product into compliance somehow. In the commercial world, that usually means long hours in the lab. Let me back up. And at the desk, making measurements and running simulations to identify the problem and the recommended solution. A good EMC engineer working with a good design team can usually avoid the 11th hour marathon of last-ditch efforts at correction of flaws, but not always. In the military world, particularly the aerospace end of it, compliance can be a bit fuzzier. Consider a fixed-wing fighter jet. It has literally thousands of technical performance, design and construction, traditional, and even political requirements. A great many of these requirements share the same design space, similar to the overlapping areas in a Venn diagram. Each discipline of necessity writes their requirements in a virtual vacuum. All of these tend to be conservative in nature. The result is that at the system level, the desired endpoint can be reached even if compliance with all of the lower level requirements has not been achieved. It is in this nebulous region of EMC engineering that aerospace EMC engineers spend a lot of time and energy, working with individual design disciplines that are not or cannot be fully compliant for any of 100 reasons. The upside, if there is one, is that the cognizant EMC engineer eventually learns how every subsystem functions, how they all interrelate, and interact with the overall vehicle design. These overall systems are becoming increasingly complex and have been compared to living organisms with complex reactions to external stimuli that may not easily be modeled or predicted. Without a full grasp of how everything works together in a synergistic whole, troubleshooting such a system can be an EMC engineer's worst nightmare. The downside is the cognizant EMC engineer gets to defend requirements repeatedly and spends an inordinate amount of time assessing non-compliances. This process can get out of hand. The Space Shuttle program had more than 400 waivers against its EMI requirements at the end of the program. The International Space Station currently has more than 300 waivers and is still counting. That sounds bad, but consider what we do on a daily basis. Enclosure design, crosstalk control, cable and harness design and routing, materials selection, component selection, electrical bonding between vastly different metals and composites, field-to-surface coupling, diffusion effects, field-to-wire coupling and transient suppression and protection from high-intensity radiated fields, potential nuclear electromagnetic pulse, lightning electromagnetic pulse, electrostatic discharge, mitigation of triboelectrification, plasma vehicle charging, power supply and signal filtering, each having a totally different purpose and architecture. Optimization of circuit characteristics that the electrical engineer didn't even know or realize he had. Embedded lightning protection and structural components, and on, and on, and on. The point here is that EMC is truly a system-level discipline, and not just some backwater, obscure electrical engineering function that gets tagged on as an afterthought to the electrical or avionics design groups. All too often, EMC has been the bastard child of engineering, shifting from one department to the next with each reorganization, because decision makers don't fully comprehend how EMC fits into the overall scheme of product development. Now, that's not altogether the fault of the decision makers. Successful EMC engineers tend to be very good at what they do, and so they generally end up being transparent in the process. Given the opportunity, we look at the design of the various components of the system, determine what needs to be done to ward off EMC problems arising, and take action. Product after product ships, no MC problems identified. And soon management begins asking, well, what value added are you guys? I didn't see we have any problems you have to fix. Working with this sort of management leads to those 11th hour sessions I spoke of earlier, high-profile visits to the lab to identify why the product failed its radiated emissions measurements, and what are the changes that can be implemented now that will cost nothing, require zero time for implementation, add zero mass, and zero volume to the product. Of course, not all managers fall under this description, and a growing number of them are recognizing that EMC is and must be an integral part of the product from start to finish. This is true across a broadening swath of industry, both commercial and military. The symposium has several hours of focus that highlight different aspects of the discipline where such recognition is growing. There's that 11th hour. A prime example is signal and power integrity, once the domain of a handful of digital and analog designers working in the background, working with low-density circuits and clock speeds in the low megahertz range. Efforts within this community have exploded recently in their impact and relevance to the successful creation and production of today's electronic devices. Driven by ever faster clock speeds reaching into the gigahertz range, rapidly growing circuit densities, driven by the desire for packing greater capability into smaller packages, in spite of the amalgamation of circuit functions into microprocessors and programmable logic arrays, and the need for stable and robust supply voltages at ever lower magnitudes, all of which are eating up margins of performance and immunity. These areas are of such importance, the Society decided to incorporate a signal and power integrity embedded or parallel conference in our annual symposium in 2014, and we have never looked back. This year we have multiple SIPI events scattered throughout every day of the week, inextricably interwoven into the development of newer and more capable electronics is the use of nanomaterials and silicon-based photonics. As devices become smaller and smaller, the need for functional design at microscopic levels is rapidly becoming an absolute. As it has always been, EMC is an integral part of these microscopic circuits, and the industry has seen new and steep challenges in that regard that have never been dealt with before. Photonics has always been a powerful and effective media, but is now entering new domains. Again, driven by ever-decreasing device sizes and the need for reduced electrical power consumption and efficiency. There are several very interesting papers and sessions in these areas this week I think you will find informative. The military is certainly no stranger to all of this innovation and shrinking size. Long aware of the need for stringent control of electromagnetic interference and protection from both unintentional and intentional electromagnetic radiation, EMC requirements for military applications are constantly evolving to renew, improve, and enhance methodologies and techniques for forefront technological design, platform certification, and to address the needs of manufacturers and end users alike. This year, we also have several activities focused on military interests that should provide some answers, highlight some successes, and maybe generate new questions. And that's as it should be at a symposium. Of course, the aerospace industry is constantly working at the edge of innovation, even though hard driven by cost and schedule, and although the EMC requirements typically are based on or derived from older legacy documents such as MIL Standard 461 and MIL B 5087B, they tend to be heavily tailored. Fighter jets, passenger jets, and crew modules designed for lunar orbits are generally complex, as I described earlier, and what works for one may or may not work for the other. Even terrestrial aircraft incorporate sophisticated sensors and transducers that monitor airframe flexure, rotating member bearing status, and surface currents related to or caused by nearby lightning activity. The portion of aerospace that perhaps might be called outer space deals with existing platforms like the International Space Station, as well as new and exciting work ongoing with the Orion Space Launch System and Ground Systems Development and Operations programs. Equally exciting, the Commercial Crew Development Program, currently funding two major contractors, one of which already has a successful cargo delivery system, to develop and field new platforms to travel between the Earth and the ISS for crew and potential payload transport. We have a number of aerospace activities this year that should be interesting and informative, and Jim Lukash and I will be hard-pressed to keep up with all of the stuff we have planned, but we'll do what we can. These activities should be interesting and informative, and for those who are in the business who are just curious or somewhere in between, I suggest and hope you find these activities to be well worth your time as well. Well, to paraphrase Arlo Guthrie from his classic piece, Alice's Restaurant, I've been singing this song now for about 30 minutes. I could sing it for another 30 minutes. I'm not tired or proud. My whole purpose here today has been to talk about what is this strange animal we call EMC in 2016. Where is it taking us hence? I've talked a little bit about who we are, how we became who we are, what we do, and even a tiny bit about why we do it. I've given a little history about radio that I suspect many of you have never heard before. Here at the end, I know I've rambled around a bit, but I have tried to bring awareness of the aspects of EMC, at least as I am familiar with them, in the here and now, and highlight the future I see that is with us even today and certainly lies just a few sunrises ahead of us. I certainly don't know all the answers, but I can tell you that here this week, if you have questions, there are a great many people present who just might be able to provide you with the answers you're seeking. Along the way, don't be surprised if you yourself end up being asked questions that you already have determined the answers to, or perhaps just discovered at the paper or the experiment and demonstration or tutorial presentation that you attended 10 minutes ago. If that happens, it'll make the whole week worthwhile for you, eh? Thanks very much for your kind attention, and I hope I passed the audition.
On my way over here, I was carrying this styrofoam box, and someone stopped me and said, "You got your organs in there?" I got a heart for you. No. On behalf of the EMC 2016 committee, I just want to thank you very much for an excellent keynote.
Thank you.
And,
Welcome.
present you with this Aboriginal statue
Wow.
of a bear. And,
Wow.
with the picture?
Wow. I can tell you this will have an honored place in my house. Thank you very much.
The real challenge is getting that across the border.
We'll figure that out.
All right. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.